First and Now is the official BC Lions podcast. Matt Baker, Nick Kowalski, inside the Go-Goat Sports Studios, the Wall Center downtown. Great to be back here. It's been since before camp, Nick.
Nice
right?
And comfy. Yeah, I believe the date was April 25th, so it's been way too long since we've been back here, but it feels nice.
That's right. That was my birthday, I think. Yeah, I remember being in here on my birthday. It's been that long.
Bought you a beer upstairs after, yeah.
That's right.
Good
That's
times.
right. Very. How could I forget? It is great to be back here as we are recording this on a Thursday, just kind of in a time warp this week. Just the one practice so far. Of course, had the Monday night game in Toronto, but we're going to look ahead here to the Alouettes, but no matter where we stand on the editorial side, our affiliation to the club, we have to talk about Toronto. BC Lions dropping their first game of the season, 45-24, but I think overall, we've had a long flight home. We've digested it. We've, like I said, been out at practice. But we're going to go the way of Aaron Rodgers here, okay? And hear me out. RELAX. Everybody, relax. They will move forward from this. The season's not going down the drain just yet. But now, Grant, Vernon Adams Jr. specifically talking about the interceptions, he owned it. He knows he has to be better. But I think a lot of people will be pleasantly surprised just how this offense may regroup here on Sunday.
Yeah, that's what it's all about. It's all about regrouping on Sunday, and this group is probably more fired up than ever to do that based on how Toronto went. But we talked about this last week. Toronto's a damn good team. They're the defending Grey Cup champions. I mean,
that is the most balanced team that we've faced.
Yeah, find a weakness. Point out a weakness in Toronto. You can't.
Physical running game. Chad Kelly, I'm not going to anoint him yet, but he's been good enough.
He's been
been played good enough to win. They're ferocious on the defensive line, as we saw. Very opportunistic secondary. Robertson, Daniel, the 3 interceptions, 1 returned for a touchdown. So that's a good football team.
Yeah, and we saw this right in the Grey Cup too, where passes over the middle are getting intercepted by defenders dropping in and out. Enoch Mwamba's pretty much game-clinching interception last year is what I'm talking about. And who was that quarterback then? It happens to everybody, is my point I'm getting at.
Yeah, and VA talked about this last week in the questions he was getting. He was asked something along the lines of what has made Toronto's defense so good, and he says they've got the Calgary staff. Local guy Coquitlam, Corey Mace running their defense now. For as much accolades as Ryan Phillips was getting, and he's still getting them, rightfully so.
Yep.
Corey Mace is a name you're hearing talked about more now as a possible future head coach in this league. But yeah, they are good. Now, 6 interceptions. You never want to see that. Was he forcing a couple of throws? Maybe, but he's called big play VA for a reason, and this offense has thrived on the big play. Case in point, Vernon Adams Jr. is your CFL passing leader still. That doesn't get nullified because of a few bad throws.
Touchdown leader.
Lions lead the league in net offense, 392 yards per game. Had over 400 in net offense. Now, we're spewing out numbers that might not be entertaining to some people. Again, it might sound like we're, letting people off the hook, but we don't care. We're just saying what we're saying. BC Lions boast the CFL's touchdown reception leader. Rhymes with the touchdowns, Alex Hollins with the catches. So, that was not a pleasant game to be a part of, but it kind of goes both ways. You kind of have to. There's been more good than bad since the acquisition of Vernon Adams Jr., and we've been better off for it.
100%. And I'm not going to throw out names here, but you saw comments about it. That was window dressing in those first 3 games. Well, last season, Vernon Adams threw 180 passes with the BC Lions and threw 1 single interception. So what did that matter for in those 8 games that he played for the BC Lions?
Yeah, that was in Edmonton, correct? And that was a game they won by 17 points, I think, right?
Yeah, so Vernon Adams has been electric.
Yeah.
Might I remind you, too, Vernon Adams is on pace for 6,000 total yards this season. Mm-hmm. Think about the quarterbacks who have done that in the history of the CFL. It's a very, very small list. So maybe, I was even thinking this, maybe the standard has been set so high, and that's not a bad thing either. You want, this group is striving for excellence, and at the same time, it's not harsh to say. Vernon can definitely attest to this too, that you need to make better decisions in those situations, and then everyone will tell you that too. I bet like the blame's not totally on Vernon either. The offensive line will tell you they could have performed better. Receivers will tell you they could have helped Vernon out more. So you lose as a team, you win as a team, and I think we're ready to move on. It was hats off to Toronto. We hope to see them again. But
yeah, well, we're not scheduled to right now, but there's a long way to go before November. And it's funny, again, I mean, as excited as everyone was, including us on this podcast a week ago over how it went in Winnipeg, at the same time, we were cautious. And this starts with Rick Campbell off the top, and he says, there's no statement here. Just came here to win a football game. That's what we did. Winnipeg's a team they will see 2 more times at least. Have to go back there the first week of August. They'll be here for the Gravy Bowl, I believe it is, in October. So, again, now we're going to focus this podcast as well as rehashing Toronto with a very tough Montreal team. You know, just a week ago, that Alouettes team was being talked about as maybe the surprise in the CFL. And, you know, if not for a couple of bad turnovers against the Blue Bombers, maybe that game's a little bit closer. Game was played in some pretty awful conditions, wet conditions in Montreal. But like we're not changing our focus. We expect Winnipeg to be the toughest competition for a first place spot in the West. Nothing changed when the Lions went in there. That's still a very good football team. Yep. We know Toronto is a very good football team. I think the Argos and Alouettes will meet next week. So a couple tough ones for Montreal coming to BC Place. But you know what? Hey, in the long run, it could be a good thing. You know, we had a similar situation last year, Game 4, getting it handed to us by the Blue Bombers. And in the long run, I think that was a good thing. The Lions ended up rattling off 5 or 6 straight wins after that before Nathan Rourke went down with the injury, right? Didn't lose again until going into Montreal. With Antonio Pipkin and a fairly fresh Vernon Adams Jr. But, hey, it's pro football. It's a long season. The Grey Cup is a tough prize to obtain, and the Lions were reminded of that looking at the team that just won it a few months ago, that there's a certain level you have to play at. Yeah,
and ready to move on. Got some Sunday afternoon football. First time in a while, right? Can you recall the last Sunday game at BC Place?
I can. It was... We might have to look this up before or after we talk to Joey Alfieri of the Montreal Alouettes content team. Does a great job, by the way. He's our guest in just a couple minutes.
Can't wait.
There was a Sunday game here, and for the life of me, I still don't understand how this happened. I was not yet with the team full time. I was the club's PA announcer, and I was working for TSN Radio. So it was a September in 2015 against Rick Campbell's Ottawa Redblacks. It was week 1 of the NFL season.
I vaguely remember that. Was Siobhan Walker the Redblacks running back?
Yeah, probably.
I vaguely remember that game.
Ottawa won the game.
I have a computer right in front of me.
It was a poorly attended game at BC Place for a lot of these. That was not a great year for the Lions, for one. That was the 7-11 year under Jeff Tedford. But since I've been here full time, there has not been one.
I'm looking forward to it.
I'm looking, I as well.
Get the family out.
I like this schedule format before the NFL starts. I like it. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Don't have to watch double headers. Don't have to, if you're the back end of a double header at home like we are here a lot, you don't have to potentially be delayed if the other game's going long and you're just standing there on the sidelines waiting for the game to start. So. But that was it, I believe, September 2015.
September, you're right. September 13th. I just got to get a box score here.
And you know what I remember? Yeah, good luck finding any stats for CFL, but we won't harp on that. You know what I remember? So the PA booth where you hear Brooke Ward and Don Andrews do their thing, where I used to do my thing with Don Andrews, is right next to the visiting coaches booth.
Okay.
So oftentimes you hear the visiting coaches yelling and going crazy. Mark Nelson, who we know well, kind of has that loud, gravelly voice.
Yeah.
He was yelling all game long into his headset, and Don and I are kind of looking at each other like. We love Nelly, a great football man. It was great to spend some time with him in Kamloops last year when he was guest coaching, but. Yeah, I remember that day for a lot of reasons.
Yeah, now we're back in Sunday. I'm looking forward to this one. It's a good Montreal team too. We were kind of talking earlier in these past couple of weeks that they're an underrated squad. They're 2-1.
Yep. Looking to bounce back. Looked very impressive in their 2 wins in Hamilton and home to Ottawa to start the year. So and we're going to talk about this with Joey. They do have some playmakers on both sides of the ball. Very quickly before we get to him.
I got the box score too.
Okay, what do you got?
Henry Barris was 31-18. Henry Barris was Ottawa's quarterback. Brad Sinopley threw a pass.
Yep. Was that a Travis Lulay game for us?
John Beck.
Wow. Oh, wow.
Yeah. Keenan LaFrance had some rushes for the Ottawa Redblacks. It's funny thinking about these names.
That's how much I've blocked that season out of my mind.
Well, one funny fact, too, is for the intro video this week, we have to put in some game-themed highlights, right?
Yeah.
So I'm looking for some Montreal highlights. So I'm going to the 2019 Montreal Alouettes BC Lions game played here. And in the first quarter, guess who's picking off Mike O'Reilly? Defensive line coach John Bowman.
Wow. Yeah.
So I'm just looking at that and I'm like, wow, just some weird things have happened in just how everything works out in football world, right?
Montreal, yeah. A lot of movement over the last few years. And it's 2 teams that have only really met once a year. Then that's interesting to point out. It's our Fan Fest game. So backyard party on Terry Fox Plaza. Games for the kids, face painting, spray tattoos. Kids can meet their favorite mascot characters, Chase, Sky, Marshall from Paw Patrol. My daughter's excited for that. That's her favorite show.
Pikachu, I saw.
Pikachu,
right? Yeah.
Star Wars, Darth Vader, Stormtrooper, Mickey Mouse. Kids will get to run on the field post-game. That's a very cool thing. So head to bclions.com for tickets. The Family Zone sold out, I believe, but still plenty of tickets available. But get them while they're still there. All right, we'll talk a bit about some Lions expected lineup changes before we're done here, but we're going to bring in Joey Alfieri. Does a great job with our written and social media content for the Montreal Alouettes. What is his thoughts on a Montreal key to victory? We'll talk about Jason Moss, I'm sure. Coaching change there in the offseason. Ownership change as well. These 2 teams kind of mirror each other. New and exciting owners. Pierre-Karl Palado buying that team just before training camp. That's been a good thing for that franchise. But we'll talk about it all with Joey Alfieri coming up. All right, and off to Montreal we go. Joey Alfieri, the Montreal Alouettes content man extraordinaire, formerly of TSN Radio in Montreal. So he's kind of like Montreal's version of me, Nick.
That's what you were saying, yeah.
Yeah, an ex-TSN Radio guy who's turned to the dark side now doing content for the team. Joey, hello, bonjour. How are you, sir?
I'm good. I'm the Montreal version of you, but just not as good looking. That's all.
Well, I'll go with that. Sure. As long as other people are saying it, that's fine. But no, you got the face for TV camera. I see you there doing all the sideline reports, post-game interviews on the field. So you're good. You're in a good spot. This is your 2nd or 3rd year doing this, I think. How much fun have you had making that transition?
Yeah, it's been really cool. Like this is season 2 for me. I joined the Owls in Feb 2022. And it was tough for me to leave radio. It definitely wasn't easy. I loved radio, but grew up, season tickets in the family to the Montreal Alouettes. CF Montreal, Montreal Canadiens, always special to me, but the Alouettes were just on a different level. We'd get to the games early as a family. We would stay late to kind of yap with the players after the game was over. So when that opportunity came about, it was too good to pass up. And the adjustment's been really smooth. It's been great. And it's different to be on the team side, but I kind of like it. I like kind of pushing the media around, the local media, including a shout out to Herb Zurkowski from the Gazette, who I push around a lot and bully. So it's been fun. It's been a really cool experience. And all kidding aside, it's nice to have a different kind of working relationship with the media.
Yeah, if you can keep Herb in line, that's obviously half the battle. Love to hear that. Herb, an all-time legend in the CFL media circles, no
Just
doubt.
ask him.
Yes, exactly. Just kidding, Herb. We love you. This current Alouettes team, of course, a bit of a turnaround last year. 2-1 through 3 games. Very impressive win in Hamilton. winning over Ottawa to start things off. And then, of course, ran into Winnipeg last week, a result we didn't like for a couple of reasons, because we just get to hear again how last week against us was just a blip on the radar for Winnipeg. Unfortunately, they had an off night. It had nothing to do with the Lions, right? But anyway, just jokes aside, your overall assessment of this Alouettes team through 3 games.
Yeah, they've been really impressive. Especially, you look at what they've been able to do. All 3 phases of the game have contributed at different times early on in the season. Um, I know that coming in, power rankings and expectations nationally were not very high for the Alouettes, but this is my second training camp working for the team, but I've covered the team for a long, long time, and I've seen my fair share of training camps. And there's just something about this team. There's something about this group where I was like, I think the CFL is sleeping on this football team, because just there was a competitiveness that Coach Moss and the coaching staff brought to training camp every day. And I think the scouting department did an unbelievable job of finding talent that was outside the CFL, which isn't easy to do, and making training camp super competitive. So, I trust my eyes, but I didn't know how this would translate to the regular season. And then, there's a hard-fought victory against Ottawa where defensively they dominated. They held them to 12 points, I think it was. And then there was a big performance in Hamilton where special teams and defense came through again, and the offense kind of kicked in, and we saw some big plays. And against Winnipeg, it was a little more difficult. There was some strange conditions out there, but you got to give the Bombers credit. Coming off that loss, like you mentioned, to BC, they came in and they played a really, really good road game. Even though Montreal came close, shot themselves in the foot a little bit when it came to some untimely turnovers, and they ended up coming up just short. I know 17-3 seems a little more lopsided than the game was, but Montreal had their opportunities. But I know the chatter has been around Montreal's the sacks that they've given up and whatnot. But the bottom line is Montreal's offense has been really explosive this year. They lead the league in plays of or passing plays 30 yards or more. And the offense has looked fine. The offense has looked good enough and more than good enough. So I know that people nationally might be surprised that the Owls are 2-1, but based on what I saw in training camp, long story short, it doesn't surprise me one bit. They look really focused and really good.
I wanted to ask about the offense, Joey, and specifically Cody Fajardo through 3 games. He's only thrown 72 passes, but like you just mentioned, they lead the entire league in these big plays. So is that something you kind of expected going to the season in terms of the offensive script, or do you think that's kind of just how the cards have fell so far?
Yeah, I think the coaching staff have said from the very beginning that they wanted to be aggressive, and obviously the receiving core looks different. So the 3 Americans that they ran with last year are Geno Lewis, who's in Edmonton, Jake Winicki, who's in Sask, and Reggie White, who's still in Montreal, but coming off a serious knee injury, and he's not going to be available till later on in the season. So your 3 starting American receivers aren't back. So I wasn't sure what you were going to get when it came to big playability, but Austin Mack has been great, and Keon Julian Grant, the Canadian receiver, has just taken another step forward that I'll toot my own horn. I totally saw coming. You can tell that progress from year to year to year in the CFL that was undeniable. He's a kid, great athlete. He moves really, really well, really dangerous with the ball in his hands, and so those 2 guys have really led the way. And then Cody Fajardo, I feel like he's really. The adjustment to Montreal has been seamless. I mean, it felt like every day in training camp he was getting better, and he looks more and more comfortable with every practice that goes by. But you don't know. Like I felt like Cody was going to be fine, but based on they had some struggles last year in Sask, and now he's fully healthy. And what you see on the field, I think has been pretty convincing from his part. And I don't even think you've seen him run for as many yards as you can. Like all these big plays, like we talked about. The 30-plus yard plays have all been with his arm. And I think there's more plays to be made with his legs as well. And I think that the more they get comfortable together as a unit, I think the more you'll see Cody be able to scramble and take off on design runs and whatnot. So to me, Cody Fajardo has been very, very good. I think he still leads the league in the completion percentage. I think they want to run the ball a little bit better with Standback. And I think the holes are going to open up front. But to answer your question, Cody Fajardo has been very, very good, and I think he'll only get better as they can all get on the same page as the games and the seasons kind of progress and come.
Yeah, and then when you mentioned those new weapons, you mentioned Austin Mack, and that's someone that caught my attention really from, I think it was the first drive against Ottawa in week 1 where he caught that long ball, and then
Yeah.
last week, like, Cody's just throwing jump balls to him, and he's usually making the plays too. Is he someone that, I imagine this is the case, but you're watching in training camp, and there's always these guys in their first years coming up to Canada where they're catching everything in sight, and you're looking at, "Who's this guy?" And then
Yeah.
you see Austin Mack. I'm assuming that was the case with him. He really stood out from day one?
That was exactly the case with him. So it's funny, like the first day of training camp, the depth chart at receiver was kind of jumbled, right? Like, so when you scout a player, you know that you're bringing somebody in, but you don't know how it's going to translate to the CFL game, how they're going to pick up the offense. I think Austin Mack joined the starting offense on day 2 of training camp. Training camp started on a Sunday. He joined the starting offense on the Monday, and then just never relinquished that spot. Uh, Incredibly consistent, learned the playbook really, really quickly. Just a really smart dude. Had an opportunity to do an in-depth interview for an article I wrote on him after week 1. Just a smart guy. Went to Ohio State. Was a pre-med guy. So like he's really cerebral. He's a smart football player. He's a big body and he moves really well. And just a great fit in the Canadian Football League. And so, he's another one. You're seeing this in training camp, and you're like, okay, like to me, I'm not a football genius by any stretch, but I'm looking at this and I'm like, this guy looks like he's a really good player, but let me see what happens when the bullets are flying for real. And then, it was a 120-yard performance against Ottawa. It was 2 touchdowns against Hamilton and over 100 yards against Winnipeg on a rainy night. So he's fit in really well, looks really comfortable out there. And it just, to me, for 2 guys that have never played together before, seeing Fajardo and Mac connect that quickly has been super impressive as well. So Austin Mack, I know it's early in the season, but he looks like the real deal. I think he's going to continue to produce. And, as important as Lewis was to this team, and as difficult as it is to replace those guys when they walk, having an Austin Mack kind of jump into the CFL and kind of step up and be that guy so early on in the year is a big reason why Montreal's 2-1.
Joey, talking about Jason Moss, year 1 as Montreal's head coach, but obviously a bit of a natural fit given his connection to Danny Machocha, your general manager. Just your overall sense on Coach Moss, the command he has over the locker room and how the players have bought into him early so far.
Yeah, so I didn't know Coach Moss at all before he got the job here. I met him at the introductory press conference. So I didn't know him at all. So I thought what you saw on TV was what you got, and it's really not the case. I don't I kind of understand why he has the reputation of being hot-headed, but just a good, like, cool dude, very structured, very organized, incredibly cerebral. You can tell he's a guy that's passionate about the game, commands respect, and I think he has the respect of the locker room almost immediately. But there's just a structure in place that this team needed in the coaching room, and I think that he's brought that. I like the staff that he has working for him. We talked about Noel. Well, we haven't talked about him, but Noel Thorpe, the defensive coordinator, has been around the CFL for a couple decades. And again, this is a defense that's number 1 in a lot of categories. And in the categories they're not number 1 in, it's BC that's number 1. But I thought they've done a really good job on defense. And keeping Byron Archambault as well, who's a young up-and-coming special teams coordinator, and the Owls have dominated on special teams too. Like, he's pushing all the right buttons for the most part. And for a team that's had as many changes as the Alouettes have had, to have the early season success that they've had on the field is a testament to what the head coach, the leader, brings to the table. So I've been really impressed. He's been really sharp, really good. Works well clearly with the staff that he's brought, and you can tell there's a structure to practice, and they're organized. They try to get as many plays in as they possibly can, offensively in particular, with Coach Moss. But to me, it's been a really, really nice fit in this market.
And Joey, I'm going to switch gears a little bit here, but I wanted to ask about this because I was so fascinated with it when it came out. But Inside the Nest was a mini documentary you guys produced in the preseason, and it was really neat in that it went right into Coach Moss's meetings, and you saw the all access kind of stuff that I know the CFL teams now are starting to really come out with. But Can you just talk about that documentary, how it was produced, and just some more details on it overall?
Yeah, we hired a really really good camera crew that's based out of Montreal. They came over to training camp, but again, like we ran everything through Danny and through Jason, and they were super open to it because if they're not open to it, having GoPros in the meeting rooms and all that stuff, I mean, you don't get anything interesting. But the organization was super open to it. And then we had some parameters. We kind of drew up a game plan with this production company, and they did an unbelievable job. They knocked it out of the park. We really wanted to show kind of what goes on behind the scenes in with professional football team in training camp, and I think that we were able to accomplish that. But a lot of the heavy lifting was done by the agency. Agency 96, I think they're called. They're gonna kill me if I got that wrong, but I'll get it to you guys later. But they're unbelievable. They do some high level work. They've worked on Hard Knocks with HBO before. They do a bunch of Formula One stuff when the Grand Prix comes to Montreal. Like they've done a lot of high level stuff, and I think you saw it in their work that they absolutely crushed it. I think the players liked having them around too. There's some interesting storylines to follow, but we were really really happy with the finished product because there was a lot of work, a lot of subtitling because we got to do things in both languages here, which is great to reach the same fan base but two different fractions of the fan base. But it was just another one of those things where you present this plan. You guys know how it is. You present the plan to management and the coaching staff, and it's like you don't know if it's going to get shut down or not. But they were super open to it. And there was sometimes watching it back. We watched it back with Danny, and there were some times where I was cringing, and I was like, "Ooh, is that too much?" And he was like, "Nope, I think it's I think it's great. I think we need to leave it in there for the fans to see." So I mean, we didn't cut any. Like we had a screening that we did internally, and it was about 53 minutes. We watched the whole thing together, and they gave us a thumbs up. So they never really they didn't censor anything in any way. So everything that we and the production company wanted to put in there ended up being in there. So the juiciest stuff, the cutting of the players and whatnot was it all came together really nicely, and we're really happy to get the thumbs up. But I appreciate you mentioning it because a lot of work went into that, and I hope that fans outside of Montreal enjoyed that as well. We got a lot of messages congratulating us for even from non-Als fans that were like, "Hey, this was amazing, and we appreciate the access." So no, it was really cool, and I appreciate you asking that.
Yeah, we hear you there. It's we get it from Neil McAvoy, Rick Campbell. Without their blessing, it's hard to do, and it helps when you have a very supportive head coach and general manager. Listen, Joey, I know you have to run here quickly, but I guess 30 seconds or less. You're looking at this game Sunday. What is one area where the Alouettes need to take advantage of here?
Yeah, well, I think the big playability, and that's obviously you can go cliche in the trenches. I think that's going to be a big battle as well, but on both sides of the ball. But to me, it's BC's defense deserves a lot of credit for what they've been able to do early on in the season, and the Alouettes offense, as we mentioned earlier on, they've been able to get some big plays in some different ways, and so the Owls have a road win under their belt, and so they've shown that they can go out there and win in enemy territory. But the battle I'm looking at is Ryan Phillips' defense against the Jason Moss, Anthony Calvillo, Cody Fajardo offense, and is Montreal going to be able to rattle off some big plays? I think they will be. I've seen them do it in every game this year. No matter how many points they put up on the board, they always have a handful of big plays. But I guess it's a question of can you execute them at the right time? Are you able to run the ball effectively to set up some play action and whatnot to make it easier on yourself? But to me, the Montreal offense against the BC defense in particular is something that I'm looking at in that respect. And then, obviously defensively, these two teams have been good. They're number 1 and 2 in passing yards allowed. BC's 1, Montreal's 2. So I think offense is going to score. I think there's going to be some points in this game, but it wouldn't surprise me if there was a lot of big plays on defense as well. So I'm looking at the Montreal aerial attack against the BC. I guess we'll call it the secondary, but it's kind of the whole defense. That the way that the Lions operate. So that's the matchup that I'm looking forward to watching on Sunday night.
Excellent, sir. Well said. We know your private jet is waiting on the tarmac to take off here, and we'll look forward to catching up here this weekend, Joey. This has been a pleasure, long overdue.
look forward to seeing you guys. I appreciate you having me on.
Sounds good. Thanks, Joey.
Excellent stuff with Joey Alfieri. Yes, kind of their version of Matt Baker, but he was selling himself short there. He's a pretty handsome guy.
Yeah, top 5 beard game probably.
Face for
CFL.
radio like me, but that's...
Nice beard, yeah. I give him compliments all day.
And good for you bringing up, they're doing some great things on the content side. Like I said, these two teams very much the same on and off the field with what they've got going on. Inside the nest, brilliant job chronicling the training camp process. And said it again, every team should be doing this. We have the access. That's the great thing about the Canadian Football League, is that, especially us here with Neil and Rick letting us inside and making us feel like welcome parts of the team.
Yeah, and I think even if you're tuning into this podcast because you're a BC Lions fan and you want to hear a BC Lions news, I think if you enjoy CFL football and the characters in the CFL, you should be checking out all 9 teams' content. I definitely gave this a watch when it came out. It's really cool it's always cool to see the meeting rooms. I always find that fascinating. So, inside the nest, they were able to show Coach Moss, Danny Machocha going over, evaluating the preseason and their roster. So just really cool stuff to see. And yeah, hope to see more of it in the future.
And we look forward to seeing Joey here at BC Place in a couple of days. Expected lineup changes for your Lions. Again, this is a weird week. This is Thursday, and we've only had one practice, but it looks like Lucky Whitehead will be back. Of course, he had to go back on the shelf with that lingering hamstring problem. So Lucky will play. We'll see how the depth chart looks as far as what receivers will be where, but we know Lucky is back on. The news not as good for Taquan Mizell. Again, looked to sort of re-aggravate his knee issue toward the end of that game in Toronto, and Coach Rick hasn't said it, but we don't expect him to be back. So perhaps
this week.
Yeah, sorry. For this game only. But that's not official yet. Coach Rick wasn't going to go there, but hard to believe with only one more practice. If he's not out there on Friday, then I'd say that's not happening. Have to declare his status on Friday anyway, as far as the injury report goes, but we'll see what happens. If it's a matter of activating the newcomer, Sean Shivers, signed a couple weeks ago. Of course, you have Keenan LaFrance and David Mackey, who are capable of getting some touches there. So I'd have to think it's something they would do by committee. So that's the running back situation, and the return of Lucky Whitehead is really the main things to talk about from a lineup perspective.
Oh, for sure. And when it comes to the running back position too, I imagine the coaching staff, they have to evaluate the blocking too, right? We hear about this so much. We hear about this so much, how running backs, it's great if they can run the ball forward and be flashy and all that, but they have to be able to act as an extra blocker on so many plays.
And that's what Mizell's been good at too.
Exactly.
Right? So
you could argue it won him the job this year.
Yeah.
So see how Shivers picks it up. David Mackey's been here for years. He understands this playbook. Keenan LaFrance now has been here for a couple of weeks. So there's definitely options. And seeing Shivers today in practice, he's got some speed to him. He was coming off the edge today, and he's a quick
He's
guy.
a scat back, 5'7", can move quickly.
Little thick too. He's got some muscle on him too. So I'm excited. If he does crack the roster, I'm excited to see what he can do in a full CFL field.
Yep, and of course they made that move bringing him in and letting Antonio Williams go, so that just shows you what they think of him, that they would be ready to potentially activate him with Taquan Mizell expected to miss some time. Again, we really won't know until the injury report comes out on Friday, but perhaps a week off for Taquan with a bye week ahead, so maybe that's more of a precautionary thing, get him right. He was out there today doing drills on his own, officially a non-participant, but so it's good to see him out there still, just not actively participating. Week 5 in the CFL, I think pretty much getting underway now almost, right? Edmonton in Saskatchewan, so by the time you're listening to this, that game likely over, but...
And what has happened, Matt?
Sorry?
And what has happened, Matt?
What has happened?
Well, by the time you're listening to this, the game's going to be over, so you're going to go Nostradamus?
He kind of flew right over my head. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that Saskatchewan pulls it off.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Edmonton going back to Taylor Cornelius, so that's the guy they're trusting most right now. So, hey, who knows? You can hit me up on Twitter at BakesTakes84 if I'm wrong in my assessment, but The Elks, a bit of a work in progress. Winnipeg, home to Calgary on Friday Night Football. Of course, the Bombers back home for the first time since a 30-6 drubbing by your BC Lions.
So they say.
Just a blip on the radar, though, apparently, depending on who you talk to. But Calgary getting some reinforcements. I think they're going to get Reggie Begelton back. I saw Rice and John, the SFU product, going to make his debut, expected to. So Calgary slowly but surely getting healthy. Of course, they're missing Malik Henry for the rest of the year. Likely Philpott as well, out for a majority of the season. So Calgary coming off the bye. You know how well coached the Stampeders, well prepared they are. Coming off a bye, maybe that's a bit of an encouraging sign. But we shall see how that one goes. Winnipeg, always tough at home, 2 weeks ago aside, but we'll see.
I think the team coming off a bye week, I read today, is undefeated too, through 3 weeks of action too. But there's 3 teams coming off a bye this week, so interesting to go on that note. And yeah, it should be an advantage for Calgary, but like you said, home field is definitely an advantage for Winnipeg. Another weapon Calgary's getting back in their receiving core is Mark and Michelle. And if
other one.
If that name rings a bell and you just can't put your finger on it, it's because he hasn't been in the CFL since 2018. He played 2 years in Calgary, accumulated over 1,200 receiving yards, so he was definitely a threat for them in the passing game. And then he went on to play for the Philadelphia Eagles and I believe some other teams after these past 5 years here. But he's back in the CFL, so excited to tune in to see what he's got. I was gonna talk about this with the Montreal BC matchup we got this weekend, but I always find that if you want to watch a football game just casually, you can just watch the quarterback and watch how he throws the ball. But if you want to watch a football game, you look at you just watch one player and watch their matchups. And so Michelle's gonna be one guy I'm definitely gonna be watching on the TV broadcast. And then this week we brought it up with Joey, but Gary Peters versus Austin Mack. If you're just a fan of a receiver versus a DB, that's Gary Peters number 1 and Austin Mack is number 81 in Montreal. If you're just a fan of one-on-ones, tune into those two guys going at it because it's going to be a battle all night in that area.
And then week 5 Saturday contest. Again, love this 1 game per night thing. Hamilton home to Ottawa. Ticats looking for their first win, also coming off a bye. But how about this? Jeremiah Mazzoli is back for the Red Blacks, first time since that horrific leg injury suffered about a year ago this time in Saskatchewan, and he's going back to face his old team here to boot. So great on Jeremiah Mazzoli for working his way back. Certainly a courageous effort on his behalf. But unfortunately, Tyree Adams for Ottawa out for the year, torn ACL. But so hopefully Ottawa's bad injury luck with the quarterbacks ends there because it's certainly been trying for them. Because again, Jeremiah was kind of signed there to sort of ignite their rebuild in the nation's capital. So Hamilton at home, normally tough, despite their 0-3 record. And who knows if there's a rust factor with Mr. Mazzoli. I think I'd lean Ticats in this one, but who knows? I'm
going to go with the Red Blacks. I've always liked Mazzoli, and it's so good to see him back. Like you said, just a courageous effort to recover from that pretty gruesome injury. And yeah, Ottawa, I'm happy for the Red Blacks. Hopefully they can put it together now, but it seems like they have been kind of riddled with bad luck when it comes to injuries lately, and Mazzoli is their franchise guy, so it's good. It's good for the league too. We're seeing it now with Toronto and Chad Kelly that if you have a good quarterback, it's good for the market, good for the league. So I'm hoping good things for Mazzoli and he can stay healthy and keep playing at that level he was. And I do expect Ottawa to come on top in this one actually.
All right,
Mazzoli factor.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, they're certainly going to rally behind him, you would think. So, yeah, the bottom half of that East Division, how do you break that down? We'll have some answers here in the next few weeks. Of course, the BC Lions trying to hand Montreal another one in the loss column. 4 o'clock, Moj, Julio, Paul McCallum, or be Karen Sermon on the sideline, seeing as it's a home game. But anyway, Moj and Julio have your pregame at AM 7:30 at 3 o'clock. BCLions.com, you find tickets, FamFest, again, plenty of cool fun and games with the kids. That's going down Sunday. The weather should be outstanding, so knock on wood that the roof is open. It's a day like this as we're recording. And hopefully, it's a bye week for us next week, so we'll figure out what we're doing. Perhaps do something on Monday to recap it. I'm heading off to the Okanagan on Tuesday, but first things first, Lions and Alouettes. Enjoy it.
Until next time.
First and now, the official BC Lions podcast I'm on Twitter at BakesTakes84. He is on Twitter at Nick_Kowalski.
I'm on Threads now.
I'm on Threads, yeah. Same handle for
Threads.
me, BakesTakes84.
I got a period instead of an underscore, but it's my name.
It's the same as your Instagram.
Yeah. It looks promising. It looks promising.
I do, yeah. I'm giving it a chance here. My only thread I sent was that note on the Lions and net offense, so I'm trying to be useful on there. All right.
I was putting on my supper yesterday. I was putting on everything.
There you go. Yeah, keep doing it. For the threads. It doesn't quite sound like for the gram, but we'll go with it. All right, until next week, folks. Be safe.